Okay, here we are, once again at Aunt Liz's to continue the family history. Today is February 19th, 2013. Hello, Aunt Liz.
Hello, Marsh. Nice to see you.
Nice
Thank you for a nice lunch.
You're welcome. We're going to ask about your parents. We are curious about your parents' childhood. Is there much you can tell us about that?
Not really. Mom came over on the boat. We don't know what boat. When she was about 7 or 8, I believe, and they landed at Ellis Island. I think I've said this before, like the guards there, or whatever you want to call them, if someone was sickly, they would put the kids' coats on backwards, and they weren't allowed to come into the United States. Or if they thought they were sick with something, disease, or perhaps even like crippled or maimed or something, they weren't allowed. They were turned away. She remembers that. And then...
who did she come here with?
Well, her mother, and let's see, that would be John.
Hold that thought. Okay.
The family name was Stankiewicz. I'm very sorry. My mother had her mother and father's passport books, and she wanted me to take them. And I said to her, Mother, you might want to look again. And she never offered them again, and she chucked them out. That would have been her mother and father's, visas or passports is what I'm referring to. Passport books. They were a big size book, and almost like the Kindle size, really thicker. But I mean, it was naturally in their language and stuff, and so I just didn't take them. But I'm sorry, but that's what happened. Let's see. It would have been the mother, my Uncle John, and would have been Uncle Joe then, yeah, because Uncle Adam must have been born here. And
what was your great-grandmother's name?
I don't remember that. I had it on a paper. I've given it all to Barbara Ann. Do you want to stop it a minute?
Okay, we're back with Aunt Liz. She did a little more investigating, and this is what she found.
The name is, they changed it to Stankiewicz, but it was Stankiewiczz.
And what was the spelling they turned it to?
Austria, to Stankiewicz, Stankosh.
And Grandma was from Austria?
Yeah.
And what was the name of the city?
Krakow, but that is in Poland, so I don't know. It must have been sort of on the border or something. But we always claimed it was Poland she was born in, but then just shortly before she died, she said it's Austria. So apparently it was near the border or something. Here now. It says that we always say that Pop was born in New Jersey, but it says here on this thing that he came from Hungary. Let's see. I don't know. I'm sure he was from New Jersey, Pop, though, really.
Did your father have an accent?
No. I never knew my father with hair. He always had a horseshoe. Mom used to cut his hair for him. He said, Annie, I need a haircut. And she'd sit him down and he'd cut the hair.
And your mom always had super long hair, right?
Yeah. She never cut her hair until she went into the nursing home. Never.
Wow.
I happened to go visit her one time. Well, I think actually Linda and I were bringing her the television set that I bought for her. And one of the nurse's aides were saying, I need help with Anna's hair. That's another thing. Nobody ever called my mother Anna except her friends that she worked with in Phillipsburg. She worked in the silk mill. And the friends only called her Anna, but everybody else called her Mrs. Lutrin. Lutrin, they would say. And she had her hair cut in the permanent, and then she used to get permanents every 3 months or so after that. She had a curl. Oh, I started to tell you, the one said, oh, I need help with Anna's hair. And I said to her, oh, I'll help you. Mom looked so surprised because she didn't know it was early in the morning, like, before 10 o'clock, I'm sure. And so I went in and I braided her hair for her. And then we stayed and visited and put the TV up for her.
Did you girls always have long hair growing up?
No, Mom always cut our hair.
Okay.
We always had bangs and short haircut. She really was a marvel. I mean, just cut it straight and like old junky scissors or something. And I'm sure she cut the boys' hair, but I'm not that positive on that. She had clippers, hand clippers. You just clipped them up and down. But we always had long, short with bangs. When Sister Barbara was born, she was born with kind of curly hair, and Mom would make her Shirley Temple curls. I remember Barbara sitting at the table, and Mom taking her finger and wrapping the curl around her finger. Barbara used to have all these Shirley Temple curls.
Oh.
Mother always had time to take care of everybody. It was really wonderful.
So she wore her hair always in like the halo, right? Around
Mom,
her.
She had a coinca, we used to call it. It was just something, she'd take her hair all together and just like kind of make it into like a, well, kind of like a ponytail, but then she would wrap it around, and then she had these hairpins she would stick in it, and then it would be like a knot in the back of her hair. Mm-hmm. It would just be there. And then in later years, she wore the braids. She would braid her hair and then put the braid up on her hair. She would part her hair all the way down and do that. She always put a towel around her dress. She never came down. I don't know if she ever owned a house coat, but she had them. Let's say she never wore them. She had a towel that she would wrap around her because she didn't want all her hair when she'd be combing her hair. But she'd comb her hair, and boy, she would braid her hair later. That's how I remember more. And braiding her hair and putting it up very neatly. And it would always stay that way the whole day, yeah. But she didn't really do that braids till, oh God, maybe we were almost in high school, like sort of. The other way was always the coinca.
What does that word mean?
That's just it. It's just like you call a bun, I guess, today.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's just like something that you just take your hair and all twist it around, pull it back here, and just keep twisting it around.
Mm-hmm. When your mother came here, did she speak any English?
No.
What language did she speak?
Well, Polish. I'm assuming they just learned. She, as far as I know, she never went to school. They weren't insistent on people going to school. Uncle John and Uncle Joe, and then when Uncle Adam was born, they all went sort of to school for a short period of time. Anyway, I don't think they ever graduated from even like say 8th grade or something. Mm-hmm. But Mom's mother died young, and then Mom and Pop raised the 3 brothers then, and people used to think that why is their name Stankosh, and George Luteran, the son, my brother, his name was Luteran and theirs was Stankosh, but they all got along. And
how much older were they than like you and Dad?
Well, my mother, they were, well, let's see, Mom was 19 when her mother died, and then the boys would have to be like maybe 15, 13, and maybe 12, somewhere in around those ages, 13 or 10 maybe. We never really talked ages like that. We just knew that she raised them from little ones up. Mm-hmm. And
she didn't have any sisters though, right? It was just
no,
her and
just
the 3 boys.
Yeah. And then the one brother, like I said, Michael, had died, and they had buried him in where they came from, Poland, let's call it then, I don't know. And but we never knew about him. She never spoke of him until I had my son Michael. So we never knew that till then.
How about your dad? Where did you think he came from? New Jersey?
I think so. I think so. I think he always just said he was born. He was just born. That's all he said. And he claimed to be born on Christmas Day in, let's see, Mom was 1901. So then he always claimed December 25th, 1901 was his birthday. And
When was your mom's birthday?
Mom's was September the 15th.
1900?
1900 she was born.
Mm-hmm. Did your dad speak English then?
Oh,
when
yeah, Pop was always just English speaking. But yeah, he knew and he spoke Hungarian as well. I guess maybe that's what his mother and father spoke to him. I really couldn't say. But he always told the story that he was like a nasty, mean child in school. He used to, well, I don't know about chewing tobacco that young, but he used to just always be not wanting to go to school. And there was an old lady, her name was Miss Case, Anna Case, maybe, I think that might have been. And she was a school teacher, and she had Pop. She lived in Stanhope, and she was alive yet, so that we knew of her, like, as kids. And she said that Pop was a bad boy.
Oh.
He was a bad boy.
And did he have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, he had a brother, Louis, and a sister, Elizabeth. Elizabeth died in 1919 then with what they called the dysentery, or after the World War came in, they had, a lot of people were dying from that. That was, I don't know where these people get going. Grandmother was really shook up after Lizzie died, and she, well, everybody made bathtub gin, and she used to make bathtub gin, and then she got to drinking more bathtub gin than what she made and all. And she used to always feel sorry for this lady that lived next door to her, Mrs. Zablocki, and she'd say, "Oh, poor Mrs. Zablocki, she's so sick and so bad." And yet grandmother died, Lord, years before Mrs. Zablocki. Mrs. Zablocki lived to be 90-some. She finally moved out like to California with the one daughter living out there. And I happen to be friends with her daughter, Helen. Helen lives in Florida now, Helen Rubino. Graduated 8th grade in high school with her. They lived next door to grandmother on, well, what do they call that now? Plain Street, yeah.
What did your dad do growing up?
I don't think he really did too much of anything. I remember he worked at the Mineral Wool Company there in Stanhope. He used to work long hours, long shifts there and all. They made mineral wool, which is illegal. What do they have now? The carcinogens or something in there?
Asbestos?
It's asbestos, yeah. It's insulation, like they made insulation and stuff. Yeah. He worked, that was just right down the street from where we lived.
When you lived in...
Stanhope on Kelly Place there when I... We lived in several houses on Kelly Place. They used to call that, I think, Plain Street at that time. Or Bridge Street. No, Bridge Street was the name that they had before. When Kelly Beverage came, they made soda, and then they changed the name to Kelly Place, but otherwise it was always Bridge Street.
Didn't our dad work at Kelly Place? I mean, at Kelly Beverage?
Yeah, yeah.
And what did he do there? Do you remember?
Well, it was just a soda manufacturing and packaging plant. I remember walking by and hearing the bottles clink on the belts, conveyor belts and stuff. And once in a while, the door would be open and you'd see the bottles twisting and turning on the conveyor belts.
And Dad used to work on the train?
Yes, he was a
he shoveled
fireman,
the coal?
shovel coal. Yeah, yeah, your dad, yes.
Was he just young then?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And where did the train go? Do you remember where the train went to?
Well, I would imagine Dover as far. I imagine Dover. I really never got into it, but used to.
How about Dad's friend, that guy Jack Satoris? Can you tell me about him?
Excuse me. Well, that was like in high school. They had a program, work-study program, and if you were smart in your classes, like you could get out of school early and you'd earn, I don't think it was more than a quarter, 35 cents at the very most an hour working for somebody, like, and that's how he got started with the horses at Jack Satoris, yeah. I believe he must have ridden his bicycle over to there because, you know, there wasn't another car or anybody to take him there, and after school or whenever. And he really got to be very good friends with that Jack Satoris, yes.
And where was Jack's place at?
Country Club Estates, they called it in those days, in Bud Lake.
Okay, so he'd ride from Necon to Bud Lake?
From Stanhope to Bud
Oh,
Lake.
Stanhope.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, Stanhope to
About
Bud
how
Lake.
far is that?
Well, you could go on the back road, and it really wasn't quite as terrible. What you consider now as like Love Lane, and it's kind of be off and around and about that way. I honestly don't really remember. I remember there was a fire tower in Bud Lake, and I have walked over to that fire tower, but I don't really recall. I think that was somewhere down by the airport in Stanhope. There was one at the bottom of Kelly Place and past the cemetery, and then turn off to the left again, and then you'd go down the hill, and there was a field, and they used to have an airport there, maybe only 1 or 2 planes, and they used to also play baseball and have baseball games there on Sundays and Saturdays.
Do you remember Jack teaching the horses to do tricks? I remember my dad talking about that.
I don't really remember everything about the tricks or whatever, but I know I had a ride one time in a sleigh hooked up to the horse, like in the corral that Vera, George, and I had a ride, and Put had stayed off on the side or something, and Jack came out and he kind of gave Lou a little bit of hard time because he didn't think that George knew enough about getting the horse to go the way he wanted him to go or something. But it was in a paddock, like, you know, fenced in. It couldn't go anywhere or something. But it was a real snowy night, I remember that. But I believe that was like we took the car right over because everybody couldn't go there. They was the car then. But when he used to work, I'm sure he just rode his bicycle over.
What do you remember about Dad joining the service? This is a pop quiz, by the way. That's why I listen.
Yeah,
catch her off guard.
Yeah, right. I believe that Mom had to sign for Lou because he wasn't that old enough yet. Somehow, December, and his birthday was like January 41. And let's see, would he have been old enough? He was born in 25, would have been
24.
24. Okay, he would have been just, yeah, he would have been December 41. Yeah, he would have been 17. I guess you'd have to be 18, like, and we would have been 18 the next year. Yeah.
Did you used to write letters to him?
Oh, goodness, yes. Goodness, yes.
All of the siblings?
I think so. I was more or less the letter writer to him, I would say. My mother couldn't read or write really, but she used to like kind of dictate letters to us to write to him. And yeah, we wrote to him quite a bit. He had come home from the Navy training, and he had that was when war was declared, and he had a telegram. We did not have a telephone, but the telegram came to the neighbor up the road to report back to his duty, like, or something. If my memory serves me correctly, he was going back that very day that he was done, or, you know, supposed to return to his base. War was declared.
Was your father in the military at all?
No, No, my father was never in the military, no.
And then your brother George was also in the military?
George joined the Air Force.
And then Anne also?
Well, no, Aunt Ann was a nurse, and they had what they called the nurses. There was something, they wore gray coats and hats and stuff. I can't recall what that was called. And Anne was at Newark City Hospital training there, and she did that. Then there was also like the gas rationing, and then one time when somebody was home on leave, because she was considered in the service, she got allowed so many miles of gas, or so many gallons of gas, and to use for the car. And what the heck was that called? Gray. I don't know. Anyway, they had long gray coats, and I remember my mother cutting one off and shortening it up so that we thought that was really nice, rather than wear a long coat after they kind of went out of the style or whatever. I don't know what it was.
I remember seeing a picture of Dad and Anne.
Yeah.
Both in some kind of uniform.
Yeah. She had gray and he had his Navy uniform, yeah.
Black and white picture. It's
yeah.
So how about your brother George? What part of the military was he in?
He was in the 8th Air Force, and eventually he got stationed in England, and that's how he met his bride over there in England.
Hmm. And her name?
Her name is Dorothy Herbert. She was a nice woman, a nice young girl. I remember her writing us letters telling about the wedding dress and about getting married, and she said that they could not buy buttons over there in England about that time. It was very scarce for buttons, so somebody took cotton balls and put the cotton ball and made the button out of the cotton ball, like down her dress. And when I visited England, she still had her wedding dress, and she showed it to us. That was in 1990. Fran, Norman, and I visited England.
Wow.
And she had her wedding dress. Whether she had just washed it, I don't know, but it looked as good as new, like, or something, you know.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And they just had the one
daughter, Helen. Mm-hmm.
And then she had 2 children?
Helen had 2 children. All right, what's the name? Her son was David. Jacqueline was the daughter. Okay. And then Jacqueline, since sort of always wanted to be a nurse's aide of some sort, and she sort of thought she wanted to come to America to be trained or something a little bit better, or go to a different school, but that never materialized. Mm-hmm. Now she has twin girls. Jacqueline has twin girls, Chloe and...
Wasn't it Megan?
That's terrible. I'm sorry. Chloe and...
It's okay. 3rd or 4th generation down. It's
yeah. Chloe.
It's confusing.
No, I don't think it's... Molly.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
Like, yeah. Molly and Chloe. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Come to us. Because when Tom had his Molly, I said, oh, there's another Molly Lutheran, right? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't Lutheran, of course. Whatever the married name is.
Mm-hmm. So, now when we go in the order of your siblings, Anne is the oldest.
Yeah.
And Anne married Uncle Tom, and they had 3 children?
Yeah, 3 children.
And what are their names?
Richard is the oldest, then comes David, and then Barbara Ann.
Okay, and then next is Uncle George?
Uncle Lou. George was the first.
Oh, George is first. Okay, so George is first, Aunt Anne, and then Poppy.
Lou,
okay.
Right.
We know that one.
Right, okay,
and then
put Muriel, right. 6 kids, right. And then Vera would be next. Vera married Bill Burton. Bill was he wasn't retired at that time. He was, I guess maybe he was retired. They called him back into service, though, when when Vera was pregnant with Barbara Joan, which would have been the second one of hers. And he was stationed then at Staten Island somewhere. Bill's main claim to fame is what he's proudest of. He said he steered the boat through the Panama Canal, the main man on the ship. I don't know whether admiral, whatever you would call him, but Bill was responsible for getting the boat through the Panama Canal. So that was what he claims was a main Hall of Fame. But he went back in the Navy then, like for a while.
And then their 4 kids are?
Well, Bill had been married before. Patricia is the daughter from that marriage. Patricia was about maybe 2, not quite 2, when Vera and Bill got married. And then Vera had Diane, Barbara Joan, and then Florence, 3 daughters. So then they always claimed that they had 4 kids. I mean, the neighbors didn't realize that Bill had been married ever before, but not until they were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. Then Pat was older than 50, so they...
Cat's out of the bag.
That was, the cat's out of the bag, right.
Okay, and then who's next?
Elizabeth is next.
Oh, my favorite.
Oh, dear. Married to Clarence Tynan. It was on a blind date we met. The girl down the street was going with someone, and she said he had 2 friends, and they wanted 2 women to go out with them. Was I interested? So I said, yes, okay, I would go out. And we went up to the Newton movie, as far as I can recall. We just went to the movies, and then, we just said goodnight. And then Pearl, the girl that took me on the blind date, she said he'd like to go out with you again. And I said, okay, that'll be fine with me. So we went out again, and we've been together ever since.
Nice. And your boys?
Okay.
The Fabulous 5?
Fabulous 5 is right. Alan was first, and then comes Michael, then Jeffrey, David, and Peter.
Okay, best for last?
That's Peter Gray.
Okay, and then next?
Next would come Francis. Francis was married to Norman Bockert. Norman Bockert come from Tamaqua, Pennsylvania. They had 1 daughter, Marianne. Marianne was a preemie baby. They never thought she was going to live. She weighed 1 pound, I'll say 3.5 ounces or something. It was very, very tiny.
Wow.
She looked like a flat Raggedy Ann. There was
Oh my
nothing
goodness.
to her. We sneaked into the hospital to see her. She was born in Newton Hospital. Fran was maybe only not even 7 months pregnant, maybe. They didn't do things like they do now, the trimesters or anything. I don't really know what that would be. But Fran just wasn't feeling good. And somehow my sister Ann had called her on the phone. They lived in Ash Street in Stanhope. And Ann called her on the phone. She said that she wasn't feeling well. She was having pains, and Ann says, you better call the doctor. You're going to have the baby. Fran hardly was showing at that time, and she called the ambulance. They went to Newton Hospital, and Marianne was born that night. They didn't expect her to live. She was in they didn't call it neonatal, but she was in an incubator for the longest of time, almost 4 or 5 months, I believe. And then she came home once she could weigh 5 pounds. They let her come home.
Wow.
So then Fran was home with her for a while, but Fran continued working at the post office in Stanhope. She took over my job after 2 other women dropped it. They thought it was an easy job, but they didn't last very long. And Fran had taken over my job, and Fran went back to work, and then Mom and Barbara were in charge of Marianne. Either Barbara had a car, so then she would drive Mom down to Fran's on Ash Street and take care of the baby or whatever, and then they'd come home, and I don't know exactly whatever transpired there, but the 2 of them, and Fran paid Mom for the services that she provided her, and Fran would go in there for lunch at Mom's and then take the baby home after work, or else Norman, a lot of times Norman would stop after he got done working. At one time he worked at Ludlow. It was a paper company right across the street from what was the Mineral Wool where Pop had worked, and he would pick Marianne up and take her on home and go. Since they lived in Byram, Marianne had to go to school on the bus to Byram Township School, and
oh my goodness! And then Grandma raised like 3 generations of
that's
people.
correct.
Holy
yes.
cow! That's amazing. Her siblings, her
She
children,
never,
and her grandchildren.
never complained. Never once
That's
complained.
amazing. Who's next?
Then comes Barbara. Barbara was a free-willed person. Sorry to say she just passed on February the 16th, 2013, just having celebrated her 78th birthday. She was a mysterious person. She had a life of her own, but she was a good girl, I guess. She loved gambling, and she had been secretly married, no one knew about till after she passed. And I don't know what else to say about her. She always seemed to be helpful to different people. She was, good in that respect. She helped different aged people around town and all. She had been engaged to a Winnie Winfield Blanchard, but that broke off, and she never, as far as we knew, she never married, but in the secret she had been married.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry to have to say this. I don't really mean no harm. What you do is your own life.
We know that, man, Liz. Okay, how about your baby brother?
Okay, then next comes Adam. Adam, he was married twice. He had Marge was the first woman that he married, and he's now married to Mary Barr. He lives in Belvedere. We don't see too much of him. He's a loner. Then comes Joseph. Joseph was born in 1941, and Joe's now in Andover Nursing Home. We feel that because he took care of Mother day and night when she had been sick, that this could have led to him not being able to take care of himself, sort of like a, underlying, I don't know what you would call it, just inability to cope with life, I guess, is what you might say. Joe used to come to his sister Liz's quite often and visit. I forgot to mention, when my brother Adam and we used to have corn feasts when we were younger. I lived on Mountain Avenue in Hackettstown, and he would come down, and then there was a store, Sharique's, had a little farm stand. IHOP is there now, but they used to sell corn, and we'd go down and get a half a dozen corn, bring it up, we'd cook it up, and we'd still want more. They would give you like 6 or 8 ears for the half dozen, but we still wanted more. We'd go to another place just across the street. Seemed to me it wasn't Prawls. You're taking me by long years back. Anyway, we used to get corn across the street, and that's where the mall is. Well, no, it's a Chinese restaurant now, or Japanese. Bonsai something or other restaurant there now, but we used to try their corn, and would you believe we even got a third half dozen at the back at Sharique's. We had a good time, Adam and I together. We would chew it up, the corn, and I had a couple of kids at that time too, but the kids were either in school or didn't care for the corn feast, but we just had a good time.
That's cute. Okay, and baby sissy?
Okay, then baby sister Dot came along. By that time I was married and I had Alan. We used to use Dot at a baby carriage, and I would put Alan in the baby carriage and push him over to pick Dot up from school. She'd go half a day like there. It was at one of the churches where she went to school at the Main Street Presbyterian, Stanhope Presbyterian Church down in the bottom floor. She'd be so happy to see us, and she'd push Alan home in the carriage. And
What's the age difference with them?
what do you mean? Oh,
How much older is Aunt Dot than Alan?
Like 5, 6 years. 6
Okay.
years then, yeah, 6 years. And what time has you got to go?
Okay.
Wanting a baby carriage for Christmas, and the year that Vera and I got married, which was 49, we bought her a little carriage with a black colored doll for her, and had a nice Christmas gift for her. That was the carriage that I used to push Alan over. Oh, Dot was in a parade here in Hackettstown. We brought the carriage down a couple of years later, and Dot won a 50-cent prize for the best dressed doll or something like with the carriage. I have a picture of her. Whether I gave it to her, I don't recall now, but yeah.
That's nice. A nice memory.
For a doll parade or something, yeah.
That's cute.
That's it. Cut. Okay, fine.
Until
Come on
next-
now.
Until next time, you'll come back again,
Yeah,
right?
you won't come back again.
And that's the life as Aunt Liz remembers it. There'll be more. I'll be back. Bye, darling.